Most people think learning a language takes years, and if your goal is fluency, it does take time. But getting to the point where you can actually start using the language, that doesn't have to take nearly as long as people think. I'm Nick, I speak 4 languages, and I'm currently working on a language learning app that is designed to take you from knowing nothing to being able to use the language as quickly as possible. When I say you can learn a language in 2 months, which is the title, I don't mean that you're going to be fluent. What I mean is that you can get to the point where you can start understanding simple conversations about specific topics and actually start using language with your hobbies. You're still going to be translating, you're still going to be missing words, but you'll be able to recognize a lot of what's going on, and it will get easier very quickly once you reach that point. For example, if you choose something like Pokemon, you'll be able to follow what's happening in a game after those 2 months. It becomes useful. Not perfectly, but enough that it becomes usable. Now, let's start with what you should avoid, which is that you should not be focusing on grammar. That is not how you're going to get to a usable level in 2 months. What you need is vocabulary, but you need to be very selective with the vocabulary that you choose. There are word lists like the 625 word list from Gabriel Weiner, which is really useful. And there are frequency lists where you can find the 1000 most used words in a language, but that's too much for 2 months. And it's also a bit too general. It won't necessarily help you with the things that you actually want to do. So what I would do instead is focus on around 200 essential general words and then add about 50 that are specific to your interests. Those 50 words should be things that are going to show up in whatever you want to use the language for. So if you want to use language for playing one of your hobbies, then it should be vocabulary related to that. If you like a series, it should be vocabulary related to that. Or in my case, if I want to play a Pokemon game or read Pokemon manga, I will learn Pokemon vocab. As long as those 200 general words and 50 specific words are created with some thought behind it, it is going to be enough. Now, you need to memorize those words. Those are probably the only words that you actually need to memorize though, and you can do that with flashcards, but that comes with its own problems. You either have to make them yourself, or you have to hope that someone else made them in a way that actually fits what you want and what you need. And you're probably not going to find a perfect set that includes both the general words and the specific words that you want. But memorizing the words isn't enough. You also need to see them in context, so you need to see simple sentences and you need to understand where the verb shows up, where the subject shows up, how adjectives are used, and that is generally what you need. You need to know how the language actually works. And yet, I'm going to be a bit biased here. I built my own app, and it gives you those 200 essential words, and it lets you choose resource packs based on your interests. So you can learn both the general words and the hobby-specific words at the same time. And once you're done with that, you move on to actually using the language. Now, let's talk about how you actually structure those 2 months. You're learning 5 words per day. For 50 days, without having any breaks, you'll have around 250 words, and that's your base. And if those words are aligned with what you actually want to use the language for, it becomes much easier to stay motivated. This is because you can already see how it's going to be used later. If at some point you feel like you're not progressing fast enough, there's a really simple way to check. So try forming sentences in your head and see how much you can say with words that you know. That shows you both what you're able to do and what you're still missing. And those missing words, those are either words you should add or words you should keep in mind when you start using language later. And towards the end of those 2 months, you should start seeing that you can actually use the language for your hobbies. You don't need perfect vocabulary, but you should know enough to start following along with what's happening. If you're learning for cooking, you should understand basic recipes, and you might be able to watch a few YouTube videos that are teaching you how to cook stuff. If you're learning for Pokemon, you should be able to follow what's happening in the game. As long as you can use your vocabulary in simple sentences, you're on the right track. At that point, you stop studying and you start using. That's the shift. Now, if you want help with that process, that's where the app comes in. It's currently in beta, but it's fully usable. I'm using it myself with Ukrainian right now, and it works really well. One of the benefits of joining early is that you can actually influence things like which languages get added and which resource packs gets prioritized. You'll also get full access to the app once it's released, without having to pay extra, because the price right now is significantly lower than what it will be later. It's still going to be a one-time payment, but it will go up once the app is more complete. But whether you use the app or not, the process stays the same. You build a small targeted vocabulary, you see it in context, and then you start using it in something that you actually enjoy. And if you do that consistently, 2 months is more than enough